Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Conversations with Seher and John. I'm Dr. Seher and I'm driven by a deep desire to help myself and others be the best that we can all be. As I learn more about the world of self-development, I'd like to share my learnings with you all and hopefully further the cause of an incredible organisation that I strongly believe in. Today, myself and John hope to speak about charitable work and education, something that we are both very passionate about, but neither of us are experts in education. But we would be very curious to know your thoughts and your opinions on the topic too. John's work with deprived children and adults continues to help thousands in remote rural parts of the world, with many projects allowing access to education for those who would otherwise not have access. John was always passionate about helping young people to prepare themselves for the future working life. He feels that the school environment isn't always able to provide the necessary experiences to do this. Instead, by developing leadership and team working skills through fundraising and working together on village community projects, students have been able to learn experientially through Fulcrum Challenge and with Lotus Flower Trust, and have been able to develop into potential leaders and team players of the future. In addition, Lotus Flower Trust has been building homeschools and skill centres for children in remote, rural and environmentally challenging areas in India, and has helped over 10,000 children and their families. So, as always, it's a great pleasure and honour to have John with me again today, who has been a great source of inspiration for me in my life, to talk about the idea of what we learn with pleasure, we never forget. Hi, John, how are you?
I'm all right. How are you?
Good. So you've been incredibly involved in education, sort of in an indirect way, both through Fulcrum Challenge and through Lotus Flower Trust, in terms of personal development with children in schools in the UK, but then also building schools for children in remote areas in India that don't have access to education sometimes. So I'm really excited for our conversation on some of, the learning points from India in terms of the value of education. But first, I have become obsessed. When I did a project with you, we painted on the walls of the orphanage and the school, what we learn with pleasure, we never forget. And it's something that I've been obsessed with since, because it blew my mind when I truly understood what it means. So what does that phrase mean to you?
I mean, the first thing is that phrase is an Indian phrase, and it's virtually on almost every school you go to. It's highlighted on the wall above a school entrance or whatever. And what it has is it's obviously written in Hindi, but on it above it is written is a little boy and a little girl, go with pigtails usually, flying on a pencil. They're sitting on a pencil, so they're flying to their education. And I think what we learn with pleasure, we never forget. Obviously, if you're unhappy at school and you're not enjoying the subjects you're doing, etc., then you're not going to learn if you're not happy in that sort of environment. And the same applies to slightly older youngsters, because I mean, I met lots of 17. My experience was with 17-year-olds. And perhaps if I tell you a story that about the very first expedition I took was with students from Northern Ireland. Mm-hmm. And I took them to the highest village in the world, which was Kibber. And it's in Himachal Pradesh, and it's in Spiti Valley, and it's high, and you can see snow leopards and Himalayan foxes and wolves and all those things that you see in these remote areas that I tend to go to. Anyway, we'd taken them through a leadership course in the UK, in Northern Ireland. Before they left, we spent 3 days doing something. We actually worked on an environmental project there as well. Because I'm a great believer in the outdoor classroom. I mean, I hated school. I was not very good at school. I have to tell you, I was a complete holics at school. I was good at leadership. Yeah, no problem. But education, and imagine doing Latin. What a thought. Anyway, they took me all the way. I took them all the way up to Kibber. I remember walking into Kibber, and it was cold and snow, and it wasn't really pleasant at all. And what happened was we stayed there for 3 days. And on the first day, I spoke to the head man, the sarpanch, and said, well, look, we're here now. I've got a team of 20 odd children with me. and they want to help. What can they do to help us? And they said, well, the thing they could do is clean up the stream. They could clean up the stream, and the stream they're running through was horrible. I mean, it was really horrible. Dead sheep, and you know, I'm not going to go through all the detritus, but it was really horrible. Just believe me, it was really horrible. So I then sat the kids down and said to them, I remember their favorite song was Brown Eyed Girl. That was their song, and it went right the way through Fulcrum, I remember. So I said, now this is the problem, and we've got to clear this stream out. You've got to clear this stream out. I can give you some money to buy tools and things, and I got about, I suppose, about £300 or £400 for them to do that. And then one of the girls stood up and said, "Stop there, John." And I said, "Oh, why?" She said, "Well, you spent the last few days and period of time in the UK teaching us and talking to us and being involved with us on leadership and team working. I'm a great believer in team working. It's a good phrase. Leadership requires good fellowship. So if you don't have a good team behind you, I always had to have the best team behind me. Basically, I was incompetent, so I needed really good guys behind me. Anyway, this little girl, and she said to me, "John, you've been doing all this stuff. Will you be shut up for a while, please? And we'll tell you, go away and come back in an hour, and we'll tell you what we're going to do and how we're going to organize it." Yeah. I thought, God, that's fantastic. So I went away, and of course, they did a fantastic job. And they actually changed my life in a way, because I came back home from that trip, and it was a once-off trip. And I said to my wife, I think I've made up my mind what I want to do with my life. I want to work with 17-year-olds doing what we'd done because I've been blown away with them. Yeah. And I was embarrassed about it because as a businessman, I don't know if this applies to lots of other businessmen, but as a businessman in M&S, I had all these 17-year-old Saturday girls and Saturday boys and part-time kids who actually wanted my job one day. And we did nothing about it. We didn't train them up. We didn't do it. Well, maybe they do a lot more about it now, but in my day they didn't. They would just fill us up on bread. Yeah. So I was so impressed with these guys. They changed my life. And the story is a long story. Over 1,000 children I took all around the world through leadership and teamwork in development. Yeah. So it was a lifetime experience. It was outside the classroom. It was doing things outside the classroom. That's where you learn how to work with other people, learn about your own abilities. Yeah. So that's where it all started.
Wow. That's incredible.
That's where we found, what we learn with pleasure, we never forget. And the kids who were with me from UK, they learned with pleasure doing this work.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess that leads me on really nicely to just talking to you a little bit about, what in your mind, so what is the purpose of education? I mean, some elements of it you've talked about outside or, in the outside kind of environment and really learning about teamwork and leadership and things like that. But what about within kind of the schools that you build in India? What kind of things do the children or their families really value in that setting?
Well, I mean, the first thing is I go to many schools. We were just talking about it, weren't we? Yeah. I go to places where they haven't seen anybody like, well, a lot of people haven't seen anybody like me, but they certainly in these villages never seen a Westerner. They have a concept about a Westerner, but they've no idea what a Westerner is like. Mm. So when I go into a village and I've heard that they have an idea, they want a project, I'll never tell them what to do. Yeah. The villagers will always tell us what they want to do. And will they want an Anganwadi? Will we build the Anganwadi? An Anganwadi is a kindergarten. Mm. Or we build extensions on school. We've just completed a wonderful one in Uttarakhand in a place called what is it called? It's called the Montessori School. It's not a Montessori school, but that's the name it is given. Yeah. It's a girls' school, and they are so talented, the girls and the boys. There are a number of boys, but it's basically a girls' school with all female teachers. Pantnagar is the town area this little school is in. There are, I think, over 250 children there. And I went there on my own. Well, just Ashok, my partner, Indian partner, and we went there and we met all these people, and they put on this show, and all the teachers were. The teachers were all ladies, and they were all in their beautiful saris, and they all said, I said, oh, is the government paying for you? No. Is the government paying for the school? No. It's a school that is funded purely from the children. And the children paid the fees. So the boys at that particular time were paying 3,000 rupees a month. That's £3 a month. But the girls were paying 1,000 rupees, which is £1 a month. And then there was other children who couldn't afford 1,000 rupees a month. Their parents, they were living below the poverty line, below the bread line. So they hadn't got good facilities. There was no dignity in that school. There was no dignity. So how can they learn well? They really, I've found with children in India, all the ones I've been to search, are really keen to learn. They don't complain about going to school. They enjoy going to school because education is one of the ways, probably the main way, out of poverty. And what a wonderful chance they have in a country like India, which it's having a tough time because of COVID, but it's a country where there are so many opportunities in that country for young people. So the poorest of the poor, Dalits, for instance, what Gandhi called the untouchables, they're the lowest of the low, but they can achieve, they really can achieve. And we have another school, which we built, and there was no school. They had no school. There wasn't a school. It wasn't that we were doing up a school. There wasn't a school. So we bought one there. There's now, she reckons in the end she'd end up with 360. Wonderful woman, Mrs. Joshi, who is there, who's the head teacher, that they will have all these children in school, and they really work very hard. So I know that if they will ask us to do something like that, the value for the charity is in, we have done something really important in those children's lives and given them the opportunity. They're not blasé about going to school. For us, when we were growing up, you knew you were going to school. School was there, wasn't it? So you had to go to school. But I think probably if I give my own example, why I feel so strongly about young people being able to develop outside the classroom. Classroom gives them a platform, and people will argue with me, and I don't want to get into a debate because I'm not an educational expert. But do you know, in 25 years of working for M&S and recruiting some really good people, I can tell you now that the degree that they'd got, a PhD or a whatever in physics or geography degree or a whatever degree, that once they'd walked into the room for an interview with me, that had got them that far. When they sat down in front of me, I was talking to the person, and they were talking to me, and I was trying to find out, are they going to be any good with my staff? Are they going to be able to handle the money? Are they going to be able to handle the pressure? Are they going to be able to? And unfortunately, the piece of paper that they've got from university hadn't actually given them that ability. It just got them through the door in many cases. Obviously, if you're doctors, lawyers, and they're really professional people, they have got to have all those qualifications. But I really feel for children because they, how many I ask people, what are you going to do with your lives? They embarrassingly say, I don't know, John. And I said, well, I'm now 70, in fact, I'm now 80. I haven't got a clue what I'm going to do with my life. People ask me, how did I plan Fulcrum, and how did I plan so-and-so? And why did I go to the Northern Rhodesia Police in 1960? It was because basically I got out of my father's hair. So and life falls into their place. So I'm very, very, I really encourage when I see people doing things like GAP and going out into the world, spending a year going around the world. I don't really, I wouldn't, would I? But I don't approve of them spending a whole load of time lying on the beach and drinking and all sex, drugs, and rock and roll, if you like to call it. Whatever, that was my generation. I don't really approve of that. But first, they can do so much good while working in a school or whatever. but so much good also by traveling and learning and meeting people, and all the ones I've ever seen go through that process, from the child, that the person who went out on their gap to the person that they came back on.
Yeah.
They ain't the same person.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so you talk, the last time we had this conversation about education, you mentioned this idea of education of life. And I really liked that. And it kind of summarizes, what you've just said. But in terms of the workforce of the future, who are young people or children at the moment, and, in the next 10, 15 years will become the workforce, how do we help develop them into becoming the people or the workforce for the future? What kind of things, what kind of opportunities should they have? And I guess this kind of has to be twofold, really, here, but then also the children that you help in India as well.
Well, I don't think we can only provide facilities in India.
Yeah.
We can't influence what's going on with their education program.
Yeah.
It would be impertinent of me to even think about doing that.
Yeah.
As far as we're concerned here in the UK, I think we have to give them the best education that the school can give, that the school curriculum can give. I mean, I've got how many have I got? 4. I've got 4 grandchildren going through the education process at the present moment.
Yeah.
Very interesting to ask them, are you happy in what you're doing? Do you go, do you learn with pleasure?
Yeah.
I don't know. But I think you have to give them that. But then the other thing I would do, that I would have a much greater opportunities for youngsters, and encourage them more to do things like Duke of Edinburgh's Award. I could look at a line of 20 students lined up in front of me who were coming on the mountains, trekking or whatever, and I could walk along the line and say, "You've done Duke of Edinburgh's Award, haven't you? You've done Duke of Edinburgh." I could tell straight away which ones had done that sort of experience, and I think that we should have. I think there ought to be a lot more of those experiences.
Yeah.
Maybe they're not in the future because of COVID. Not everybody's hopefully rushing off on holiday now to wherever they go. But maybe when things calm down a bit and people get used to coming back to life, with the problems with the environment and I'm not going to be here, but where the country is going, where the world is going in the future, maybe everybody won't be flying around the world like I've been able to.
Yeah.
Maybe that just won't be available. But we've got the most amazing country with the most. I've spent hours on Snowdonia, and that really influenced me. Being out, I was in the army there, running up and down Snowdon and doing the Welsh 3000s and working with soldiers and stuff like that. I mean, that was really mind blowing and life changing. I was at a public school, so I went privately educated. It's all about getting me out of my father's hair, you see. So I was sent away to school when I was 9. Horrendous. I hated every minute of it. I'm sorry about that, but I did. Until I had responsibility. When the school decided that I was very good at playing at the CC Combined Cadet Force, that I was good at leadership, became head of the house. I was vice captain of the school rugby, and I was a school monitor, and I had all the responsibilities. I took off. And my housemaster recognized me as having those talents. So I went away at just 19 in a few days, to Africa. And I spent 3 years there. And that must have had a major influence on my life and made me very much the person I am.
Yeah.
Because I'm disciplined and regimented. I don't expect everybody to be like that. And I don't expect everybody to get the same things out of experiences. Oh, but the point I wanted to make was when I came out of school, I don't think I was people wouldn't have recognized me as, I was saying people don't recognize me as a public school boy. But my father did say to me, you want to do something that can show what the working man does. So he got me a job working for the Birmingham Parks and Graveyards with the council. So here's me, an 18-year-old public school boy who thought I knew everything. I found I knew nothing because I went to work on the Bourneville estate. There was an estate, there was a park there.
Yeah.
And I worked with these men. There were two men who had been fighting in the war. One was a place called Nijmegen Bridge, where there was a big fight in the war, and another one was at Nitro's Box, which I think was something to, that happened the way they fought in Burma. So these guys had been there, they'd done it and done everything, and I had to learn about them, how to get on with them. And the foreman wrote a report on me. I mean, he said I could come back and have a job anytime I wanted, which was quite nice. I earned £5 a week. And what else did I learn from those men? I learned a lot of respect for them. I learned that they worked hard. I learned a lot about their domestic issues at home, the problems they had with their families, and I learned to chop wood, because one of the codes then was, working for the council, was we work outside. So we were what they call holotiling lawns, preparing them for bowls, and we were looking after the flowers and the shrubs and the paths, and we had to empty this enormous lake of water.
Yeah.
I remember. But if it rained, we don't work in the rain. They didn't work in the rain. So we had this big shed, and in it there was the biggest pile of firewood you have ever seen in your life. And we all sat down and we chopped wood until it didn't stop raining, and we were in the warm and all the rest of it. And
Yeah.
they were brilliant. They were wonderful, those men.
Yeah.
And they had a big influence. And thank God I went there before I went off to do my job in Northern Rhodesia.
Yeah.
And those are the sort of things I would like people to do, because when I used to interview people, okay, besides the fact I worked in with one manager when I was the deputy manager, he would, if a young man walked in the door and he was wearing brown suede shoes, no chance. He hadn't got a chance. He was down before he got through the door, poor lad. But that improved over the years, obviously. But one of the questions I used to ask these people who come out of university, and some who are on a junior management training scheme, what do you do with your life? That was the question. What do you do with your life? What have you been? Where have you been? What have you done? Yeah. What have you volunteered? Were you one of the ones, and the question you'll be asking now, were you one of the ones who volunteered to work in the car park down the road at the surgery to help the surgery be able to do all those injections? I mean, they're fantastic, those people down there, all those volunteers. So I would be interested in young people. Have they done that sort of thing? So I would be encouraging everybody that when they're not at home in the classroom, not at school and working in the classroom, but in their holidays, which I used to find so boring, I should have been out there working and volunteering. I admire those people who get paper rounds.
Yeah.
I mean, I really do admire them, kids who go out and do those sort of things. So that's the sort of thing I would be encouraging as part of life's curriculum.
Yeah.
Learning skills.
Life's curriculum. I like that. Yeah. So I think that's great advice, really, isn't it, for young people, particularly those kind of that are, teenagers at the moment, to be able to do things like that. John, you touched upon kind of, how things might be changing in terms of travel and things like that with COVID. And actually, probably last time we didn't talk very much about what it's like to be running a charity at the moment in terms of COVID-19. We might have touched on it briefly, but I know it's something that kind of is probably at the forefront of your mind right now because it's still kind of affecting your work.
Oh, it's horrendous.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought I had the best job in the world. I mean, certainly when I was in Fulcrum, I loved Fulcrum. And I love this. I love Lotus Cloud Trust, the work we do here. And I'm so lucky to have the trustees and support that I get and the people I work with in India.
Yeah.
And I'm a great believer in working as a family. They're part of as far as I'm concerned, they're part of my family. I'm responsible for them. And whether they are part of a school or sort of one of those people we've helped with work, or the people who do the work. Unfortunately, very early on, I learned that in the middle of last year that my two main funders, who I had worked with who had been with me for 10 years, were pulling out. They weren't doing it intentionally. They didn't want to pull out, but one was a school where I took teams of up to 30 from the schools away with me, and I looked after their project work, and I organized their treks, and I organized their community involvement, stuff like that. And I worked with their very, very good masters from their school. And they were all boys, actually. They were brilliant. They were really good. They thought they knew everything about the world outside until they came out with me. And then they found they knew bugger all, excuse my French. They knew nothing. They didn't. And they were first to admit it.
Yeah.
And they were wonderful. Work hard? My God, could they work, those lads. I was so impressed. So I lost that. And I also lost a big major company that represented traders in the hotel, in the airport business. Massive business. I lost them as well. And there had no intention. I mean, it was really very, very sad. That's cost me, our turnover at Lotus Flower Trust is 150,000 a year. Maybe on a really good year, I was able to get 200,000, but normally we were fundraising up to 150,000 a year. For that, I can do 5 major projects in India and run the charity itself here. So that was 80,000 out of the window at one go. So that was over 50% of my turnover gone. And here I am writing letters, going through files, contacting people, photocopying all sorts of things. Why does everybody want to see our accounts? And ask, please send us your accounts and evidence you sent them to the charity, to charity commissioners. Well, if they look online, they're online. We give them our online. It's online. Just costs me 14 sheets of clean white paper, whereas most of the time I use photocopy paper twice. If I could do it 3 times, I'd do it 3 times, but it's twice. All the paper I use goes through twice. And then, we have to produce all these various things. And so I've written now over 100, lots of people. There is a saying in the charity world, for every 100 letters you write, you get 1 reply, and that may well be a negative reply. So I'm in that sort of vein at the moment. And, it's not my trustees' responsibility, although I moan, wish they were able to find more. They contribute in all sorts of different ways to the charity. They really do. I have to say that because one of them is my wife. But no, I'm not joking. My chair of Lotus Flowers, a lady, the support she's given me and her husband, and then one of my great friend who's a doctor, used to be on the Polaris submarines. That's why he has a laid back life, because he doesn't run anywhere. Doesn't doctor. He's lovely. So I'm trying to fight to save the charity. How much time have we got? We'll last this year, but God knows about the future. And what does that mean? Whilst I'm saddened by it all, and I can't take my trustees out, and people like yourself who so many people want to come out. I don't know why they want to come out with me. They want to see the projects, but they've got to be able to live with me if they come out with me. It's the money lost is not about us. The money lost is not about us. It's about the children. We build schools, homes, orphanages for children. We work with special needs. We've got 2 wonderful homes with special needs children. Wonderful. One is with children. One, I went to Ladakh, and they said, John, can you do something for special needs people in Ladakh? And there wasn't a real centre. So we not me, our fantastic funders funded the centre for me. And we've got a brilliant centre with some absolutely brilliant people, wonderful people. We've just got 30 wheelchairs specially made because they need to be able to put up with a rough land in Ladakh. And so we got it from an Indian company, Motivation India. 7,000 quid they charged us for 30 wheelchairs. So across that country, because it's about 250, well, how many is it? No, it's about 500 miles, I think, from east to west, and the depth is a lot less. Anyway, it's a long way. And there's special needs people There are people who are disabled all the way across, from villages right the way from the east, close to the Tibetan border, to the west, close to the Pakistan border. They are all having 30 of them, or 27 of them, 3 of them for vehicles, are having brand new wheelchairs. And that will immediately change their lives.
Yeah,
I
that's
can't
amazing.
do that again. If I don't raise the money, Seher, I won't be able to do that anymore.
Yeah.
So we have them to help. Then we've now started this, I think, which is a great project, an environmental project, which is building artificial glaciers at altitude for villages where the natural glacier is receded away from the village, and so it's too far to get their fresh water. So a friend of mine in Ladakh, he's come up with a system whereby we can bring the ice water and freeze it about 500 meters away from the village over the winter when it goes to -30. And then in spring, this time now in the mid-March, the water runs down to the village, is collected and distributed on the fields for the cattle, and then for the domestic use. And that stops that village. When the village has no water, there ain't no village. The village has got to be closed down.
Yeah.
So they go and live in the town. They go to Leh and live in town. Well, the town is overcrowded already. So and think about all the culture that's lost and the tradition that's lost. So we've started working with them. And then the other thing, which everybody laughs at, where I work with destitute women. We have 2 homes, or I have a centre for destitute women in Rajasthan, where they all have their own sewing machines, and they produce goods and they sell them. And they all have an income now, as opposed to never having an income because their husbands never gave them any money. There's, I don't know, 500 people with sewing machines. It's grown that large. And then the other one is in Uttarakhand, up in the mountains. There is a home. It's a centre for women who are waiting to appear in court because their families abuse them. Husbands abuse them. Families abuse them. My God, to see some of the girls, 18 years of age, married, and they are smashed. I mean, they are in the most appalling state, 1 or 2 of these ladies. And they look after each other in the home, of course, and then they appear in court, and they either told they've got to go back to their families, or they have a divorce or whatever it is. But for a period of time, up to 3 years, they stay in this home. Fantastic. That's all gone. If at the end of this year, I mean, it'll all go on. I mean, it's not going to, I'm hoping, praying to God, they will all go on.
Yeah.
I don't think they all keep going because they're frightened of me coming around and seeing that they've closed it. I'm sure it's going to go on for the future. So it's our legacy, Lotus Flower Trust.
Yeah.
But then I have a list. Yesterday, had a long request from a charity in an NGO in India, asking us to come and help rebuild their school and refurbish their school, which was falling to parts.
Yeah.
So if I don't get the money, it's all gone.
Yeah.
And I find that very hard to deal with. Very hard to deal with.
Yeah.
Because I blame myself. No, I do.
Well, I mean, I don't think it's your fault, though, is it? It's the situation at the moment. It's the current climate.
I should be clever enough. I should be clever enough to find a way through it.
Well, I think you are, and I think you will. I think it's just a matter of time.
Burglary and bank jobs just comes to mind.
Well, so this is what I was going to say. You know, one of the things that just blows me away about you is your perseverance in the face of adversity. I mean, I could ask you, what it is that kind of keeps you going, but I think it just kind of listening to you talk, there's so many things that probably keep you going. Is there one thing specifically that you would narrow it down to?
I'll tell you why it really started.
Yeah.
I went on an expedition to Arunachal Pradesh in India, in one of the 5 states up there in the eastern corner.
Yeah.
And with John Blashford Snell, the famous explorer, Colonel John Blashford Snell. We were in a place called Diban. And there was a forest called Namdapha over the Nurding River. We had to cross the Nurding River. And then we went trekking in this jungle forest. And I discovered leeches for the first time.
Okay.
It's called ball leeches, which you walk under the tree and hit the tree, and the ball of these blinking leeches falls on you, down your back.
Sounds wonderful.
I hate leeches. I really, with a vengeance. I've had socks full of them. But there was a little girl who came with us when we went walking, or she came with us, but she met us as we came back, I remember. And I did take a walking, because it was in the forest. We were walking back through the forest with this little girl who was 15.
Yeah.
She wasn't, she was younger than that, maybe 14, 13. And that was it. I mean, I didn't know any idea that Fulcrum would exist or Lotus Flower Trust would exist. And I said to her, chatting away, and this was before Tony Blair. I said to, because it was one of his slogans, I said to her, what does a man like me, who's left his business, and I'm now in my early 50s, or I was about 53 then, what can I do with my life? How can I help children in my life? And she said to me, yeah, I can tell you 3 things, John. And I said, oh, what are they? We need education, education, education. And that's what did it for me. Those are the first 3 words, bang, educate. So that was it, and I knew I couldn't do that in the UK. I mean, I wouldn't make a very good school teacher. I'd be too much of a rebel. Kids might like it, but I'm sure the Ofsted wouldn't mark me very highly. Mind, in Fulcrum, I don't know how many it was, because my wife organized it, but we did an ASDAN award, ASDAN awards. Yeah. And I think 500, 600, 700 children got an extra AS level with us. How wonderful was that for going away and having fun?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I remember you as being one of, if I had to look back at my education up until university and beyond, you stand out as one of the best teachers that I've ever had in that short space of doing Fulcrum with you. So I know you say you don't give yourself a lot of credit for being a good educator or teacher, but I think that in the school of life you definitely have been. And I think that you're continuing to do that.
Yeah, one thing I'm conscious of too, because I also spent some time in the military police with a much loved regiment in the army. They hated us, but I was only there for a short space of time. They had their sort of slogan, their motto was exemplo ducamus. By example, we shall. What is writing in Latin? We should be all turned to English. It's ridiculous. Everybody, what does it mean? By example, we shall lead. And the Welsh Regiment, 4th Battalion Royal Regiment in Wales, I was in Llanelli with those wonderful boys. Ich dien, I serve.
Yeah.
So that means to me everything. That's what I do. I'm here for you. I'm meant to help you. I mean, I really get cross with old people like me. That's why I can quite sympathize why the younger generation gets completely fed up with the old people, because they think we're all sitting in our ivory towers, playing golf and basic go-go's, golf, gardening and waiting for God. All these people. Crikey, if we could mobilize all the people who really have got to 65 and opted out.
Yeah.
At least that's how and there's so much that we could be doing to put into young people, so much. Yeah. So I'm totally committed to those people in India and to my trustees and to my funders.
Yeah.
And that's why it's a fight. And unfortunately, I'm certainly not winning it at the moment.
Yeah.
But I mean, I know with yourself, people aren't motivated if they don't do what they wanted to. Nobody will be a good gardener if they're motivated by getting their hands dirty and seeing the flowers grow. I'm looking at the garden now, the daffodils are up, the snowdrops are still there. There's also the roses are budding. I've been planting all sorts of things. If you're not motivated for that, then you're not going to do it, are you?
Absolutely.
So, people have to. What was that thing song I was telling you about? I won't be in somebody else's pigeonhole. No, yeah. I mean, I think we have to be in, the pigeonhole. My wife is a real carer, so she made a good doctor. My son is, I think, an excellent doctor because he cares for people.
Yeah.
And that's how life should go. People who are square pegs in round holes, tough, isn't it? My square peg was at school. He can do better. Was written across my mind. He can do better.
Yeah. No, that's incredible advice. Yeah, pigeonholes, absolutely. Anything that you would like to finish up on?
Yeah,
For anyone listening?
failure isn't an option.
Failure isn't an option.
It
Absolutely.
isn't an option.
No.
You've got to win, guys.
Yeah.
They've got to win. Haven't they? Here, you've got to win.
Yeah. Oh no, absolutely.
And
Um,
failure has never been an option.
and really, you only really fail when you stop. Actually, and I think that if you keep persevering, eventually a door opens. It might not be the one that you thought it was going to be, but it's usually one that's going to lead you forwards. Yeah. Absolutely.
In the army, they used to say, "Don't volunteer." I tell you, you volunteer for everything because you never know what will come at the end of that. That's calculated risk, isn't it? You've got to be a risk taker in life. You have to be a risk taker in life. So I don't take uncalculated risks, but then I take risks. Yeah, but failure isn't an option. I mean, you've got to work. Life is what they say. Life is a bitch, and then you're dead. I mean, it is tough. It really is.
Keep that out. Yes, no, it's true. Wow. John, honestly, like every conversation with you is something I wish I'd recorded every single conversation. We have so many conversations in between these as well. And they all are always very enlightening, always very inspiring. And there's always something to learn from them. So with that being said, I hope that everyone who's been listening has thoroughly enjoyed this conversation with John. If you'd like to find out more about Lotus Flower Trust or support any of their amazing projects, follow the link in the bio and like, subscribe and comment below. And guys, if anyone is interested in finding out a little bit more, do reach out. This was John and Seher in conversation. Until next time, my friends, stay safe and stay inspired. Thank you so much, John, and all the best with everything that you're doing. And I hope that in the next coming months that you find that actually your hard work is paying off and you're seeing more success.
Yeah, I need to find a millionaire. If anybody has a millionaire that's lying down somewhere, it's got nothing to do. I need a million.
We'll send them your way.
I tell you, if I've been in this game for 30 years, money is a nightmare. Money. Yeah. I just feel all the charities the same. So what I read somewhere 75% of all charities are liable to go bust this year. That's awful, isn't it?
Yeah.
And we all know why. But then you've got to keep at it.
You have to keep at it. Absolutely.
I think it's nice to see you again, dear.
And you.